and welcome to ARIRANG News live from Seoul. I'm Hwang Ji-hye. Our top story this afternoon, prosecutors are seeking an arrest warrant for the man who attacked U.S. Ambassador to South Korea Mark Lippert. The assailant will likely have to face several charges, including attempted murder. Officials are also looking into whether the assault is related to his past pro-North Korea activities. Connie Kim starts us off.
Prosecutors are seeking an arrest warrant to charge a man who carried out a bloody knife attack on U.S. Ambassador to South Korea Mark Lippert with attempted murder, business obstruction, and violence against the foreign envoy. A team of more than 100 investigators will look into the motives behind the assault and whether the attacker was working with an accomplice. Police say the attack was intentional, considering that the 55-year-old was equipped with the 10-inch knife he used in the incident. He had reportedly been planning the attack for 10 days. As he was being arrested after the assault, Kim voiced his opposition to ongoing military exercises between Korea and the U.S. and demanded they come to a halt. Police are focusing on Kim's pro-North Korea activities and are said to be considering charging him with violating the national security law, which bans support of North Korea. Kim traveled to North Korea 7 times from 1999 to 2007. He also attempted to set up a memorial in Seoul to the late North Korean leader Kim Jong-il upon his death 4 years ago. The attack on the U.S. ambassador was the first of its kind in Korea. High-level officials from the government, ruling party, and the presidential office of Cheongwade have agreed to share information with Washington in line with their bilateral ties. Lippert is at a local hospital recovering from surgery he received after the attack to repair his face and hand injuries, and doctors say he can be discharged as early as next week. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
Since the story of Ambassador Lippert broke yesterday, global media outlets have been focusing on the motive behind the bloody slashing and on how the attacker was protesting the ongoing military drills between the U.S. and South Korea. The Washington Post led with North Korea's callous reaction to the incident and brought up the possibility of a return to heightened tensions on the Korean peninsula. CNN International also reported on how Pyongyang applauded the knife attack. Other news media pointed out the anti-American sentiment underlying certain parts of South Korean society. And the incident had initially sparked concerns that it could hurt Seoul's relation with Washington. But given how it was handled, most analysts say it will not affect their bilateral ties. Our Hwang Ji-hye has more.
South Korea and the United States have enjoyed an alliance that gets stronger by the day. And then this happened, a brutal knife attack on the U.S. ambassador to South Korea, Mark Lippert, by a South Korean man at an event in central Seoul. But most U.S.-based experts say the incident should not affect the alliance at the national level. Bruce Bennett, a senior defense analyst at the Rand Corporation, said the attack could actually strengthen Seoul-Washington alliance by giving even more justification on the need for their annual joint military exercises. Commenting on CNN, senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations, Scott Snyder, said the incident will likely strengthen public support in South Korea for its alliance with the U.S. Former U.S. ambassadors to South Korea echo those views. Stephen Bosworth, who was in Seoul from 1997 to 2001, called the attack a very unfortunate incident, but said Korea-U.S. ties will remain intact. Donald Gregg, who served as the U.S. ambassador to Korea in the early 90s, said he was proud of Mark Lippert's brave reactions to such a horrid attack, and added that it will actually serve to bolster bilateral relations. Analysts in Seoul also agree the attack will not hurt the alliance, as both governments view it as an unpredictable lone wolf attack by a crazed individual. But they do point out that while the relationship at the government level will be unharmed, the incident could take a toll on U.S. public sentiment about security in South Korea. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
President Park Geun-hye, who's in the Middle East on a four-nation tour, said the attack came as an utter shock to the Korean government and people in pursuit of democracy and peace, stressing that the suspect's radical view on these Seoul-Washington military drills runs counter to that held by most Koreans. The president told her secretaries traveling with her to get to the bottom of the incident. She also called for preventive measures and heightened security for foreign diplomats in Korea. And during the tour, Korea and the UAE agreed to upgrade the level of their economic cooperation, signing deals in areas considered softer compared to plant and railway construction. President Park vowed to give full support to the collaborative efforts. Our presidential office correspondent Choi Yoo-sun files this report from Abu Dhabi.
Highlighting the great potential in Korea's latest halal food development deal with the UAE, President Park Geun-hye told the two countries' business leaders that it's time for Seoul and Abu Dhabi to focus on the so-called software cooperation. By that, she meant going beyond the hardware infrastructure ventures. Referring to recent joint hospital management and construction projects between the two sides, the president expressed hope that the collaboration will expand into the pharmaceutical industry and thereby spur corporate investments. In terms of energy, President Park directed attention towards the nuclear-related service sector, especially since the Seoul-Abu Dhabi Strategic Partnership was formed after they agreed to cooperate in nuclear energy in 2009. And finally, the Korean leaders stressed that the two sides should broaden their perspective and, based on their mutual trust, look towards entering a third market together. She then promised to support commercialization of collaborative ideas and to cut red tape to encourage investment. In a display of her commitment to the bilateral partnership, President Park met with a group of youth ambassadors from the UAE who had spent a month visiting Korea as part of Abu Dhabi's Korea Expert Fostering Program. She also visited the Sheikh Zayed Grand Mosque, named after the UAE's founding father and most respected leader. On her final day in Abu Dhabi, President Park plans to meet Koreans residing here to praise their achievements and to ask that they continue doing their roles in bridging the two sides. She'll then travel to Qatar, the final stop in a regional tour. Choi Yoo-sun, ARIRANG News, Abu Dhabi.
And with the president's visit to Riyadh, Korea and Saudi Arabia inked a deal to export a Korean-made small to mid-sized nuclear reactor to the Arab nation. Now, another type of Korean reactor has made it through a preliminary review by the U.S. nuclear regulator. And experts say chances are high that Korea will pass the final hurdle in just a few years, which would open up vast export opportunities for local businesses. Son Jung-in reports on the growing prospects for Korea's nuclear reactor technology around the world.
Korea has cleared the first hurdle in a process that could eventually allow it to export nuclear reactors to the United States and elsewhere, as Korea's blueprint for a 1,400-megawatt reactor has passed a preliminary inspection by the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission. The technology for the reactor, the Advanced Power Reactor 1400, is currently being applied to 4 reactors under construction in Korea and 4 in the United Arab Emirates. The U.S. Commission is the country's nuclear watchdog and functions much like the FDA for food and drug regulations.
The NRC is known for its strict nuclear safety regulations, which it strengthened last year. Korea is the first country to pass the new preliminary examination, raising hopes for the expansion of Korea's nuclear reactor business.
If Korea's nuclear power technology makes it through the final review, there will be a myriad of opportunities for competition with other strong countries in the business, like the US, Canada, France, and Russia. Korea has especially high expectations that it will be able to export its reactors to the US. The country uses 30% of the world's nuclear energy, but around 30 of its aging nuclear plants will have to be shut down in the next 10 to 20 years, meaning the demand for replacements will be high. Korea's state-run nuclear power agency says its goal is to get a final yes from the U.S. by 2019. Son Jung-in, ARIRANG News.
hike in the minimum wage has been a hot topic of discussion since Finance Minister Choi Kyung-won highlighted the need for one earlier this week. But it has also fueled concerns that too big of a jump could end up putting small and mid-sized firms out of business. Here's our Kwon So-ah.
5,200 Korean won, or a little more than $5 an hour, is the current minimum wage in Korea. The amount has risen steadily over the years, but many say it should be climbing faster. With around 3 months remaining for the government to decide on a minimum wage rise, politicians have begun talks on the issue. It was also on the table at a meeting Friday between senior officials from the presidential office of Cheongwade, the government, and the ruling Saenuri Party. The three groups agreed that a hike is needed and that it should be discussed by the Minimum Wage Council as in the past. The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy, in a separate meeting Friday, stressed the importance of an increase, especially due to the low employment rate of people in their 20s and 30s. Both rival parties also seemed to welcome Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan's remarks on the issue earlier this week when he expressed concerns about the possibility of deflation.
Unless we raise the minimum wage, we have no chance of reviving the economy. It has come to the point that we plan to provide tax deductions for companies that raise salaries higher than their past 3-year averages.
But there are also opposing voices from employers and business associations as there are concerns that a hike to $6 or $7 an hour could cause big problems for the nation's small firms. In line with this, the Korea Employers Federation has recommended that companies refrain from raising hourly pay by more than 1.6%. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
As Samsung Group prepares to pass leadership on to heir apparent Lee Jae-yong after Chairman Lee Gun-hee was hospitalized last year, the age spectrum of the group is becoming younger. Our Na Young-kyung has this story.
The average age of Samsung Group's employees is dropping. The group says 80% of its workers are in their 20s and 30s, while more than half of them were born in 1980 or later. Korea's top conglomerate expects the average age to drop even further as new recruits will start working by the end of the month. Looking at one of the group's affiliates, it's even easier to see how hard the conglomerate is trying to give itself new life. The average age of the group's biotech arm, Samsung Bioepis, is a little over 30, which is even lower than that of NC Soft, a high-profile Korean game company that began as a promising startup. Samsung Group's efforts to transform itself into a company that's fresh and innovative comes after Samsung Electronics chairman Lee Gun-hee was hospitalized following a heart attack last May. Pundits say his son Jae-yong, poised to inherit leadership of the group, is at the center of the change. And it's not just the average age of employees that the Crown Prince is trying to give a twist. The group's communication methods are also changing to cater to the younger generation through the use of online and mobile content. Na Hyun-kyung, ARIRANG News.
The wearable market's global sales volume is expected to surpass 51 million devices this year, nearly 3 times that of last year. Germany-based GfK market research firm predicts the global wearable market will expand by 191% thanks to new competitors jumping into the race seeking to grow their businesses with the latest tech innovations. The research firm forecasts growth will be led by smartwatches, outstripping sales of health and fitness trackers. The report says sales of smartwatches are expected to grow more than 6 times this year compared to last. This growth is expected to be driven by developed regions like Western Europe and North America. Wrapping up our 3-part series on China's slowing economy and its impact on Korea, today we're going to take a look at how some Korean exporters are actually managing to perform better than ever in the Chinese market, despite the slowdown. Shin Se-min reports.
Korea's #1 rice cooker manufacturer, Kuko Electronics, says its leading foreign customers are Chinese. The company's overall sales in China has grown 60% annually since 2013. Such demand even spurred Kuku to go public on Korea's main bourse last year.
Our premium strategy on Chinese consumers has worked out well. Our cooker caters to Chinese food and cooking culture, which has helped to bolster sales.
Kuku Electronics isn't alone. Korean-made consumer goods ranging from home appliances to beauty and fashion items are seeking to expand its presence in the Chinese market, a market that's rapidly growing in tandem with consumer demand.
Despite growing success in the Chinese market, the total demand for consumer goods stands at a mere 4%, but for intermediate goods, it's well over 68%. It's a significant gap, but experts are hopeful that the Korean wave and improved income and living standards in China will help stoke local spending.
The Chinese government has been fostering consumption driven by economic development. This means its slowing growth rate won't significantly hurt Korean exporters.
Experts say Korean companies should invest more in marketing and branding their goods so they can keep up with the competition coming out of countries like Japan and France. And with the Korea-China Free Trade Agreement set to take effect next year, Korean exporters will have even more opportunities to make their mark, just like Kuku Electronics. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
The European Central Bank will launch its long-awaited €1 trillion stimulus program on Monday. From Cyprus on Thursday, ECB President Mario Draghi expressed confidence in improving European economy as the central bank upgraded its GDP growth projection by half a percentage point to 1.5% this year. Draghi announced the quantitative easing program will purchase €60 billion per month through September of next year or until inflation reaches closer to its target of 2%. In response, European and U.S. bonds ended up. The euro fell to an 11.5-year low against the greenback before settling slightly higher above $1.10.
Bringing you the fresh updates from stories breaking in Korea and abroad. We give you a bigger and better picture of the world. Join Na Hyung-kyung live from Seoul. Every weekday, only on ARIRANG.
A senior U.S. advisor says the U.S. Congress should encourage Japan to make efforts to heal ties with its neighbors that have worsened due to Tokyo's denials of its wartime history. President and CEO of the Mansfield Foundation, Frank Januzzi, says that if the issues are not addressed, wounds from the past could threaten important future steps for the U.S.-Japan alliance, including the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal and the finalization of the new alliance defense guidelines. Januzzi, who described Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women as forced recruitment, pointed out that Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has been trying to minimize Tokyo's culpability. It's been confirmed that a missing Korean-Canadian pastor is being held captive in North Korea. Reverend Im Hyun-soo's family says North Korea relayed the information to the Canadian government. A spokesperson for the family told CNN to ask Canadians and the international community to pray for his release and safe return home. The reason for Im's detainment remains unclear. The 60-year-old entered North Korea via China at the end of January on a humanitarian mission and has been missing ever since. Im has been actively involved in aid missions to the north since mid-1990s, helping with various food and education programs. Parts of the U.S. are being pounded by a monster snowstorm, closing schools and forcing thousands of flights to be canceled on the East Coast. And it's again against this backdrop that a routine domestic flight turned into a frightening nightmare. Here's our Park Ji-won.
Delta Flight 1068 from Atlanta to New York's LaGuardia Airport skidded and veered off the runway as the plane was trying to land amid a snowstorm at about 11 a.m. Thursday local time. The plane went up an embankment and plowed through a fence, the only thing keeping from hitting the icy waters of Flushing Bay.
The aircraft was carrying 127 passengers and 5 crew members. Happily, there are only minor injuries that have been reported.
Everyone on board the domestic flight was safely evacuated, and at least 2 of the 24 people injured were taken to a local hospital.
It wasn't really that bad, but it was pretty scary, and I'm just thankful that we didn't go into the water.
The airport was shut down temporarily following the accident. The U.S. National Transportation Safety Board has begun investigating the cause of the accident. This accident happened amid a fierce snowstorm that affected New England through northeastern Texas. The monster snowstorm paralyzed the region, affecting some 94 million people, with more than 4,500 flights canceled on Thursday. Schools were closed, as were government offices and transportation services in some states. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
Now to some exciting news for our viewers in Spain. ARIRANG TV has signed a contents and production exchange deal with Spain's public network RTVE. Under the agreement, the 2 stations will exchange programs and news in case of a major breaking event or current affairs. The 2-way content will be provided free of charge. One of the first projects is a jointly produced documentary on smart ICT convergence with ARIRANG Filming in Spain and RTVE in Korea. That documentary will be aired on both channels later this year. RTVE is Spain's largest broadcasting operator with a dozen national TV and radio channels and 1 international TV channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. Today is Gyeongchip here in Korea, which is the day of frogs and other insects to come out of hibernation and also signifies the coming of spring. Now, this morning was quite chilly, but we are expecting mild daytime highs above the seasonal average. Now, looking above the peninsula, most of the nation is under clear sunny skies, although there is a high chance of sporadic showers in Gyeongsang-do provinces. Now, the weekend is shaping up to be even better with even higher readings during the day, so it should be perfect for an outing. But make sure to have an extra sweater with you since there are huge drops in temperatures from the mornings to nights. Now, with that in mind, let's have a look at the readings for today. Seoul will get up to 10 this afternoon, while Gwangju and Busan will get up to 12 and 11 degrees. Moving over to other regions, Jeju Island gets up to 10 as well. Dokdo heads down to 5, while Mangkungang is a bit chillier at -2 degrees. Well, that's all for now, Michelle Park, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that wraps up our newscast at this hour. We will be back with more updates at 6 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for staying with us.